Good evening. I am hereby calling to order the June 25th, 2018 meeting of the Mayfield Heights City Council. May I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Ballestero?
Present.
Mr. DeJohn?
Here.
Mrs. Finney?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Tressi?
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. First on our agenda is a presentation by David Turner, External Affairs Manager from First Energy. If you'd like to come up to the podium. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the time this evening. Once again, David Turner, External Affairs Manager for First Energy. Working your way around to you are a couple documents on our customer assistance programs. What we find typically when we receive calls from constituents, our customers, throughout our footprint, we usually get a call from somebody elderly, somebody on fixed income, who has a disconnection notice, or their power's been turned off, and they're looking for assistance in getting it turned back on. Well, as we come to discover, as we do more research, typically these are folks who qualify for some level of payment assistance. And the unfortunate thing is they were unaware, didn't take advantage of it. So now they're in this position where they owe several hundred, sometimes several $1,000s trying to get programs to pay those back bills. So what we've been doing for the course of the last few months, reaching out to our local elected officials, our community leaders, mayors, member of councils, and letting you guys know what those programs are. And the idea would be that as you're out in your communities, out in your neighborhoods, that you might also deliver this to either places of worship, community centers, neighborhood block watch groups, things of that nature. And what I'm going to do is just go over 2 or 3 of the programs, very brief. If any questions, I'll answer those. The first one on the top of the page on the left is our PIP Plus program. It's probably the most common, which stands for Income Payment Plus Plan, PIP. Essentially, our customers who are eligible are people with a household income at or below 150% of the poverty guidelines. Okay, the way this program works, the person in the household will pay no more than 10% of their gross monthly income, or $10, whichever is greater. This is actually a great program if you have folks who are, once again, elderly, on a fixed income, working part-time, things of that nature. Once again, our goal is to make sure these folks do not have a disruption of service. They can stay in their homes and keep their power on. So this is very common. On the bottom right-hand corner, it's our Heat Crisis Program. And please pay attention to, under this program, which starts July 1 and runs through August 31st, very similar to PIP, is that this program provides summer cooling assistance for low-income, elderly households, and for Ohioans with a qualified medical condition. Now, this is the most critical part. We get our nice, bakey, hot, humid weather here in Ohio, right? And typically, if you have folks who are elderly, folks who have some sort of qualified medical condition, you want the folks to stay in their house. You don't want them looking for cooling shelters. You don't want them afraid to turn their air conditioning on because they can't afford to pay it. So that can prevent other issues from that perspective as far as having heat-related fatalities. So once again, for these programs, you're looking at someone who is at or below 175% of the federal poverty guidelines, who at least has one member of the household who's 6 years of age, or who has an illness that would benefit from the assistance program. So, great program for people to take advantage of. This program starts July 1, runs through August 31st. As I tell most people, it's the dog days of summer. So that's where you're going to be wanting to take advantage of that. On the second page, if you look on the right-hand side, our Ohio Energy Conservation programs. These are, once again, our excellent programs because we believe that all of our customers want to be energy efficient, keep their bills low, and oftentimes they don't know what to do or how to do it. So at the top of the page, our Community Connections program. This program offers electric energy conservation measures, energy education to low-income customers.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Are there any questions? I know the mayor has brought up some of these programs in the past and will continue to pass them on. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
First on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on June 11, 2018. I trust everyone had time to read them over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on June 11, 2018? Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to those minutes? Since there are no suggested amendments, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved as written. Next on our agenda are correspondence and announcements. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? Mrs. Snyder?
I just wanted to commend everybody for the home days and the parade. I thought it was really very nice.
Thank you.
Thanks to all who made it happen.
Anybody else? I just wanted to comment that I thought that was one of the best parades we ever had. And my kids said the Santa Claus and the princesses were a nice touch, so we'll have to remember that for the future. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. On the same subject, Unity Days, I hope everyone had an opportunity to enjoy all that Unity Days had to offer this past weekend. With the rain threatening to ruin the whole 3 days, we managed to avoid any real serious downtime, and it turned out to be a great event. I got to thank my mom for lighting a candle and saying a prayer. A great deal of credit goes to Sean, Nick, and Patty, who spent a great deal of time and energy making sure this event is something special for our residents. The Parks and Rec Department, along with the Parks and Rec Committee, really did an outstanding job this year. We kicked off the festivities by inducting 14 new Gold residents at the Gold Resident Lunch. As well, it was well attended, with nearly 120 people enjoying a great lunch. Echoing our councilwoman's opinion, this year's parade was one of the best I can remember. Andy Baskin was a great Grand Marshal. And I want to thank the Service Department for doing an amazing job of setting up, tearing down, and cleaning up while the event was taking place. The Police Department's presence in the park was welcomed by all who attended. And as you looked around the event, you could see volunteers from every city hall department represented, and it was much appreciated. So good job. A couple months ago, School Superintendent Keith Kelly inquired about having a full-time school resource officer at both the middle school and at Lander Elementary. I'm happy to report that we were able to honor that request. The school system has agreed to split the salaries of the resource officer with the city, ensuring that both the middle school and Lander School will have someone on duty for the entire school day. Corporal Gary Nieberlein will work the full day at the middle school, and Special Officer Bob Bandolo will work the full day at the middle school. At Lander, I'm sorry. The SRO office at the middle school will have a computer that the SRO can use to check logs, complete reports, and stay connected to daily operations. And Chief Bittner has encouraged patrol officers to stop in and utilize that office as a police substation in order to maintain an increased presence in the school. So this is a great opportunity to provide a strong police presence in both of our schools. A little road work update. Fruitland is completed, I believe, as of today. And Commonwealth is moving along with milling of the surface course today. Maplewood from Sunset to Mayfield Ridge has been milled, and they are working on repairs. And Lander Road will be milled this Saturday, weather permitting. So keep in mind, that means that Lander Road traffic will be limited to northbound only. So keep that in mind as that construction starts. And after discussions with State Representative John Barnes, we have scheduled a community meeting regarding the I-271 communications tower. The meeting will be this Thursday, June 28th at 7 p.m. At the Ross D. John Community Center. The purpose of the meeting is to come together with Representative Barnes and get a chance to ask him some questions. Originally, Tim Fincham from McKay Brothers, who is the tower, who will be running the tower and building the tower, was supposed to be there, but he is not going to be there. I do have a conference call scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at noon with Representative Barnes, ODOT officials, and representatives from McKay Brothers. And hopefully I'll get to ask them a lot of questions and get a lot of answers tomorrow about the tower. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you, Madam President. Mayor, I've had several residents call me to complain about Malamed's telemarketing campaign and that our taxpayers are currently paying for. The resident I talked with indicated that she hung up on the solicitor after a short round of questions that, in her honest opinion, were very, very odd. In addition, this resident failed to receive adequate and specific answers from the solicitor as to where she was calling from and who she was working for. The resident went on to explain that the first question that she was asked was, "Do you like what is going on in the city of Mayfield Heights?" That question was then followed by, "Do you approve of the job that the mayor is doing?" The next question was, "Do you approve of the job council was doing?" The resident thought these questions were asked in a very abnormal way and not like other ways that she has had been surveyed in the past. For example, she said, solicitors usually ask questions posed like, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, how would you rate the job of the mayor? The job the mayor is doing. Due to the fact that the questioning was very unconventional and the solicitor evasive, this resident abruptly ended the call, believing it was not legitimate solicitation and that solicitation company that she was talking to. I also had another resident tell me that she was asked if she didn't have to pay for a tax increase, would she vote for it? As we know, and as a reminder, all residents, Mr. Balistrita, Mrs. Finney, Mrs. Sabetta, and Mrs. Snyder all voted to approve the Malamed communication at approximate cost not to exceed $48,000. They believe our residents needed to be educated on a potential tax increase. I was not in favor of this project, and now I'm very upset with the way it is being administered by Malamed Communication. What does the mayor and the council have to do with an income tax increase? How are these types of questions pertinent to an income tax increase? Mayor, I need to know the following. What are the specific questions that are being asked to our residents by Malamed Communication? Who developed and approved these questions? And how do these questions explain a municipal tax increase to our residents? Thank you.
Mayor?
Well, I wish you would have addressed me with those questions before this evening. I could have had all those answers for you, Mr. DeJohn. I could have had a copy of the questions for you also. So it's too bad you didn't ask that before. But those questions are all in line with questions that Malamed has used in his successful campaigns for other cities. Those questions will lead to the development of the education campaign for the residents. So the answers that are received from that survey will form the education information that will be disseminated. And Mr. Malamed will be giving council an update very soon, and you can get the copy of those questions. I'd be happy to give them to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mano?
On the same note, since Mr. Malamed was seeking the assistance of council in doing all this, I think we should have all been provided a copy of the questions that were going to be asked, so that, you know, if people contact us about it, we could give them intelligent answers about it. So I would really like to see us get a copy of those questions so that we can make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Anybody else? I just wanted to mention now, back on the Unity Days, sorry, I'd be remiss to not mention Mr. Mano, because I think his burgers were probably the best there, so had to bring up that note. Couldn't let that go. I also think he probably lost 10 pounds, but. And also, one other thing, kind of off the thing, but happy anniversary to Renee and Mike Balestria. So we're going to try to keep this meeting semi-short since today's her anniversary. So let's move on to the Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have a short report. The end of 2016, Council will recall that the legislature passed what's called a small cell bill, in which the legislature permitted various utilities to construct and place these small cells on city property and in the city right-of-way. It was a very onerous bill for local cities, and council determined to join in a lawsuit with a number of other cities in order to fight it. In all, 5 lawsuits were filed. The cities won the lawsuit in Hamilton County, won the lawsuit in Franklin County, won the lawsuit in Toledo, Lucas County, won the lawsuit in Cuyahoga County. But the one we were involved in, with about 55 other cities, was in Summit County, and that the state won that lawsuit. That decision was appealed to the 9th District Court of Appeals, and the 9th District Court of Appeals reversed the decision and remanded it not on the merits, but because the trial judge had made almost a clerical error, and they decided it was an appealable order, so they sent it back to have the error corrected. And that just happened the tail end of last week. In the meantime, the utilities and the state and our attorneys got together and negotiated a new bill, which was far less onerous to the local municipalities. A lot of changes were made. I noted a couple just for example's sake. The processing time, originally it was only 90 days. Now it's at least 120 days with a possibility that could be extended. There was no limit on the consolidated requests. Now they can only ask for 30 at a time, which doesn't seem good, but it's better than no limit. The municipality had to permit. It had no discretion in permitting these small cells to be attached to municipal light poles, stop signs, traffic signals, etc. Now the municipality is allowed to create design guidelines to deal with that. Anyway, so that's being negotiated, and there is an ordinance on the books on second reading tonight, on the agenda, I should say, regarding changing the city's codified ordinances to comply with this. We've had one meeting already with Mr. Balestrea and Mr. DeJohn. We'll have at least one more. But in the meantime, I was contacted by our attorney because he was afraid that this would go back to the trial court and they'd immediately enter a judgment against us again once they corrected the clerical error. So what they wanted to do, since this is basically a moot issue now, was dismiss the lawsuit without prejudice so that it could be filed. So I gave him authority to do that Thursday night, and they dismissed it Friday. So we're no longer involved, but we do have to come up with design guidelines in order to protect the city from the work that may be done on the small cells. But I wanted to update council on that lawsuit because it's no longer pending. Of course, we were part of the one that we lost, but that's okay. In the interim, we've succeeded in getting a far better bill from the legislature. So if there's any questions, you can always give me a call. Or ask me now.
Mr. Balestria?
I will ask you now. According to our agenda, this is third read tonight, to be voted on.
We're going to table it.
So
You're right, I
we
misspoke, it's
suggest
not
we put
second, it's
that
third. Yes, it should be
table.
tabled because
Okay.
it still needs a lot of work.
we can-
Yes, and I have some ideas to simplify things and make it, in a word, uncodified so that some changes can be made without having to go back to council.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy, Mr. DeJohn?
Mr. Murphy, I don't know if you remember in that meeting, I had asked about our small cell tower in the back, on our property here. You know, who leases that from us, how much they pay. It never made the minutes, but I did ask that. But maybe I was dreaming it, I don't think so, but I would still like to know.
I remember you asked,
Yeah,
but you asked about the tower in the back, not small cells. You
well,
asked
I
about-
thought you considered that tower on our property a small cell
No,
tower.
no, no, the small cells, as we discussed, are like maybe 2 feet, 3 feet long and can easily be put on municipal apparatus, as I said, stoplights, stop signs, things like that. No, the tower that's there is, I did find out a little bit, I don't have all the answers, but it's under a lease with, boy, I can't remember the name. I was gonna report back. Mr. Trivia will tell, but anyway, it's a
Alright.
long-term lease. The equipment is on the service department roof, I believe, and now they're looking to expand the, service on that tower. And that tower's been there 20, 25 years, something like that. But if Mr. Trivia, if you wanna,
Mr. Tribby?
Tower's been there, I think, around 2001 or 2.
uh,
This one behind City Hall. The one down by the community center's been there for probably 25.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Murphy? Seeing none, we'll move on to Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
As you know, we have several items on the agenda. I just wanted to mention the first resolution, 2018-42, deals with the tax budget. That is for the levying of the property tax next year. Has nothing to do with the city income tax.
Thank
We
you.
could discuss it more when it comes up.
And I see there's also a memo from you on the income tax proceeds. Did everyone have a chance to receive that? It was left on your desk. Are there any questions of Mr. Tribby? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll begin with the Building Committee, Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no report.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Are there any questions of Mrs. Snyder?
Just
Mr. DeJohn?
Just want to know where we're at with the pod legislation. We defeated it and we were going to bring it back, so just wanted to know.
Mr. Murphy? We're gonna work
Mr.
on it.
Murphy, did you?
we defeated it. Did you send me anything as to what,
No, we had said in the meeting that we defeated it for you to rewrite it using Winters' legislation.
oh, okay, then I'll rewrite it using the nurse's legislation.
When you let me know, then I can schedule another meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Any other questions of Mrs. Snyder? Seeing none, we'll move on to Finance and Audit Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. Finance and Audit met June 20th at 6 p.m. The purpose of the meeting, 2 items, the salary ordinance and the income tax rate increase. Council should have the meeting minutes, Mayor DeSico's memo, Mr. Tribby's memo, the 2018 Department Restructure Chart, along with the draft ordinances. These items can be addressed when they themselves come up on the agenda. And the Auditor of State's office has started the financial audit for the city ending its fiscal year December 31st, 2017. Council was copied on this email from Matthew Goldman, Senior Audit Manager. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions of Mrs. Sabetta? Seeing none, we'll move on to Legislative Committee, Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Teresi. Are there any questions of Mrs. Teresi? Next is Public Works and Service Committee, Mr. Balestria.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Public Works and Services has not met, but as I just asked Mr. Murphy, we have Resolution 2018-19 on the agenda this evening to table. And so that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Are there any questions of Mr. Balestria? Seeing none, we'll move on to Recreation and Parks Committee. Mr. Mano. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Teresi.
That's okay, you were looking down, so you didn't. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a question, and it's not directed to Mr. Balistrea, but more to Mr. Gerson or Mr. Finaro. I see Mr. Finaro's not here. I had a couple residents stop me yesterday after the parade and also last week about Som Center. That they're really concerned with all the patches that are on Som Center. I was in Heinens, and one of the residents was telling me how nice the Mayfield Village end looks, and here we are, we have all of these like patches that are like 40 feet long, and all the washboard effect. So last week after I heard this, I called ODOT. I talked to a couple different people at ODOT, asking why our road doesn't look like Mayfield Village's road. And they told me that that our city staff made the decision to not do full depth repairs. And because we didn't do full depth repairs, we ended up with the patches that we have today.
I guess I'd like to find out who told you that so I could respond to that, because I would disagree with that. We were out there marking up full depths along with ODOT representatives, and there was a decision made, and those repairs should have been made. Now, once they paved that, they came back and there were some repairs that needed to be done. ODOT went out there, decided what the repairs should be done. It's an ODOT project, so ODOT was under that control. So if you could forward me those comments, I'd like to know who said that.
I can. And the other thing that ODOT told me was that now that we've made those patches, that we will have to crack seal our road every winter, and the life of Som Center will be like 10 to 12 years if we crack seal every winter, like in October, November.
Again,
So we won't get the,
Forward me those comments, like who said that crack sealing is a maintenance item that typically do the roads. To make that judgment that it lasts 10 to 12 years, I'm not sure on that, but I'd like to see what their basis for their argument is.
Okay.
Discussion.
I can do that, because I believe I spoke to 2 different engineers. I actually called one day, more than a week ago, and after I took all of my notes and what this gentleman was telling me, ironically, the next day, another engineer called me from ODOT to kind of expand on what I first heard. So my question would be, like, did we do a visual inspection, or did we have an engineer from ODOT really check and examine where we needed full depth repairs?
There were multiple visits out there. I was out there on some of them. But we did walk the street. Basically, when they did the area by the school, we walked the street. Walked again when they opened up the other areas. Those areas were marked out. Those areas were missed. I don't know how that happened, but sometimes those areas you look at, they don't need repair, and they pop through, and those are repairs made. But again, I can't respond to a report that I don't know whether they even walked the street. Out there, I don't know.
Yeah, and they told me that they were there almost every day, and you were there. They told me Mr. Finaro was great, that he was there every day to watch the project. So they did tell me that by not doing full depth repairs, that we saved $127,000, and that we spent $90,000, I believe he said, to do the crack seal.
Well,
So he
crack
said we really,
crack seal wasn't done, so, and again, like I said, I don't know where those numbers came from, but the project was designed and it had estimated quantities of base repairs, and we went through, we marked up repairs that we thought were needed. Those should have been done. If they missed them, like I said, I don't know why they missed them, but again, sometimes you look at them and they look okay, and you pave them, they pop through, and those repairs were made by ODOT. So that was walked through. We walked through after the repairs came up, mark out the areas, and there are some reasons why you would crack seal that road, but again, whether it looks exactly like Mayfield
saw that
You see reflective
yesterday
cracking.
going to Heinen's. There's
Yeah,
that one.
reflective cracking you'll typically
Right,
see.
reflective cracking, right.
And some of the things you get into is, again, that road is 5 lanes, or it was probably originally designed as a 4-lane road, so you have a crack going down where your tire track is versus where it would be for the lane. So a lot of it goes into the design, but there may be a lot of reasons, but again, if you can forward those comments, I can look at them.
I will.
Address them.
Thank you. I'm a note taker, so I was writing as fast as I could to take down all the information from 2 different individuals, but I have their name and their phone numbers.
Okay. very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mano, I think, has a question.
I guess the question I have is how common is it that when you do a repair like we did to Sam Center, to develop so many cracks and fissures over such a short period of time? I mean, that's, to me, I can understand a crack here or a crack there, but there's, how many patches did you guys have to do up there?
I don't have them offhand.
It's a lot.
But
It's a
You
lot.
could see those cracks on roads that we did last year. Maybe not to the extent on a smaller street, but when you have that traffic, you'll see those reflective cracks come through pretty quickly.
Keep in mind, that's our most heavily populated, probably heavily driven
Well, I
area.
understand that, but
Just-
all the more reason that, you know,
One
that
of the-
road should have been.
One of the things that we do differently on private streets, or not private streets, but more localized streets, we do what they call a fabric that tends to hide those reflective cracks. If you drive down, not Fruitland, but if you drive down Woodrow, which was done last year, I think you'll see probably 2 cracks on that road. And in the public works meeting, we talked about sealing those up to keep the water in, so that's a street we did last year that has a crack developed. Again, the traffic on it's a lot different. Some fabric wasn't used. If you didn't use fabric on Woodrow, you'd probably have 20 to 30 cracks easily on the road. So it's a reflective crack of the concrete base that lifts and thaws, freezes and thaws through the winter, and that's where you get the reflective crack.
Thank you, Mr. Gerst.
I'm gonna have some questions for you after my report, so if you don't wanna take the long walk, have a seat.
And
Madam
Mr.
President.
Mr. Mano, Mayor?
We talked about doing the repairs on Sam in the road meetings, in the safety and transportation meetings we had, and all the meetings we've had with council and committee members. We never talked about completely redoing Sam, because it was an extremely expensive undertaking. And what we did was we used what we had available through a grant to fix that road, and we put in some money of our own too. So the extent of the repairs on that road was really what fit into the grant monies that we were getting, and what we felt was doable within the road budget.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, didn't we appropriate $400,000 for that part of that work?
That was
supposed to be
that was
our
our
portion,
contribution,
our
right, of the
contribution.
whole entire, yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Well, that's for that 400,000 was our portion of what was done. Now, we could have went $1 million or $2 of our own money above that 400,000, and I don't even know what it would have cost to replace that whole street. But maybe even more than a couple $1 million. Probably, if you think Commonwealth's $1 million, Sam would have cost, I am not even sure what it would have cost.
The contract, the way I understood it, was the asphalt surface. Essentially, the asphalt and the grinding was done at an 85-15% share, so we had 15% of the share. All the base repairs, everything underneath was done at 100% city. So that 400,000 that you're talking about, again, when the plans were put together, there was an estimate that they estimated there'd be so much base repair without knowing. Yes, not what we didn't estimate, it was estimated by the designer. And then when you get out there, you do as much as you can. There was no effort to shorten that amount. It was basically done what we thought needed to be done. But again, that decision was made by ODOT along with us going out there and looking at that. We weren't out there full-time doing inspection. It was an ODOT project. ODOT, basically you paid ODOT to do the inspection out there, so that's why I'm confused and why ODOT is now saying that now it's our fault.
Thank you, Mr. Gerson. Mrs. Tracy?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I thought ODOT said it was, he mentioned something about, like an LPA, local,
Yeah, we did,
versus,
again, ODOT.
one is ODOT, one is,
Yeah,
the city.
There's a lot of things you do, but on one of the projects you do an LPA is where, if, for instance, if we designed it, you'd have another company inspect it. In this case, ODOT did the inspection of the project. So that was not AECom, that was not GPD, that was not Joe Finaro. That was ODOT that did the inspection. They charged you for that inspection.
Thank you. You know what, we gotta move on, because we're just on, Public Works still, so can we move on to Recreation and Parks, please, Mr. Mano?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Our annual Unity Days Festival was this past weekend. For those not able to attend, some highlights include inducting 4 new gold residents who have lived in our city for at least 50 years at a luncheon with past inductees on Friday. Getting enough good weather to get fireworks in on Saturday evening. The fireworks show was outstanding. Sunday at the parade, many enjoyed seeing Andy Baskin, our Grand Marshal, and Fred Kramer, our Citizen of the Year, who was honored on Saturday night with a small ceremony under the main tent. We closed Unity Days with our grand prize drawing. The grand prize winners included Steve Anderson, who won the 3rd place prize of overnight stay at Glidden House and a $500 Amex Express gift card donated by Glidden House, Great Lakes Billing, and the Shaughnessy family. Matt Angolio won the 2nd place prize of $1,000 donated by State Industrial. Marla Anselo won the 1st place prize of $3,000 donated by Elk and Elk, DeSico and Sons Funeral Home, Cleveland Clinic, Hillcrest Hospital, First Energy, Org, and the Fidelity Group. The city would like to thank all of the sponsors for their support of this year's Unity Days Festival. Don't miss out on our next community event. Join us on July 13th for our Drive-In Frenzy. Food trucks from Jones Bones Barbecue, Swenson's, and the Donut Lab will be on hand for dinner beginning at 6 p.m. Acoustic Jukebox will be performing a free concert at 7 p.m. and at dusk we will show the movie Coco, drive-in movie style. All at City Park behind Drag-A-Pool. Concessions will be sold during the movie, and if you don't want to sit in your car to enjoy the movie, bring a blanket or chairs. Bring out your dancing shoes at our next Silver Social on Tuesday, July 24th. The dance will take place from 4:30 to 6 p.m. at the Ross John Community Center. The cost is $5 per person. Refreshments are provided by Manor Care. Our next bus trip is almost sold out. We will be going to Geneva on the Lake Friday, August 17th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The cost is $50 per person. Walk around beautiful Geneva on the lake for this afternoon trip. The group will eat at the lodge, and from there we'll go to the strip where you can do some exploring on your own. Lunch is included, max 24. To see more of our trips for the year, visit the website at www.mayfieldheights.org or glance through our activity guide or call us at 440-442-2627 for more details or to register. As a side note, if they're having lunch at the lodge there, if you get a time, take a walk around the grounds of the lodge. It's very, very nice. They've done a lot of stuff out there. That concludes my report, except that I have a few questions for Mr. Gerson in my capacity as a council rep to Park and Recs. I'm not trying to beat you up. I just have some questions. I told you the last council meeting that I was keeping an eye on the Oakville Park situation, and I have been over there frequently. I was over there today, and I sat there for a while, and I watched 2 guys with loaders digging out what looked like a lot of muck, axle deep, and 5 guys with rakes and shovels standing there watching them. They have a huge amount of topsoil there that has been dumped. It looks like good screened soil. My question is, are they following elevations and grades? Or are they just digging out and filling in? Because I was in landscaping for 14 years, so I was a landscape contractor. When you dig out that much material and fill it with fresh soil, you're gonna get a huge amount of settlement. And my concern is that, you know, after this thing is all done and seeded and everything else, and then the ground starts sinking, what recourse are we gonna have to take care of repairing that? And the other thing is, time frame. I asked you about that last time. Do they have a time frame for completion? Because it looks like it's a hit and miss operation. Some days you go there, there's 2 people there. Other days you go there, there's 8 people there. But it seems like it's not a plan. It's like they're hodgepodging. They do this over here, then they go and do that over there. What kind of estimate did it give us for completing that job?
So I'll double check, but I believe the completion is the 31st of June to be complete. So that's.
I'll bet my house that will never happen.
I'm hoping it will, but, again, I think it was not the last council meeting, wasn't at the last one, previous. But, I think the area you were talking about is at the, northerly backstop where they're digging out.
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Oh,
so-
wait, I'm sorry, you're right, yeah, the northerly backstop.
So there is some areas that what I've directed the contractor to do is dig out the material. They've had a enormous amount of rain, which typically isn't expected in June. And without that being seeded, it's almost like a parking lot, so all the water's going down there, sitting there. So I've asked them to dig that out, replace it with gravel, so you get better drainage through there.
They were just dumping fresh dirt in there. There was no gravel.
Yeah, I think the dirt is, was it reddish material?
It was a powdery topsoil. It looks like screen soil.
Yeah, what that is that's the infield soil mix. It's actually what the base runners are gonna be running on. And it's a crushed brick with sand in it, so that's not topsoil, that would be where it's going in, base where the base paths are going, so the design of it is you have a grassed infield, basically from pitcher to mound, first base, home base, third base, the short of second. Then you have an arch similar to the Indians ballpark where you have basically a sand clay mix that goes around the base path, so you'll see a lot of different changes. That's what they were dumping there.
When you look from the Belrose side, it looks like you're gonna get a lot of water runoff across the sidewalk there, a lot. It's pretty steep.
The side.
It's pretty steep.
So we have drains that were installed along the north border of the, if you go from Belrose into the field that weren't there before, we have 4 catch basins. We have under drains around the field. Again, what you have right now is with that soil being sitting there with no grass on it, it's almost like a parking lot. So once that grass is established, you'll have a lot less water that's going to that section, but right now everything goes there, which it did before, but before it was all grass, didn't see that much. So it should be better when we're done. That's what we're hoping, that's what we're planning on.
I hope it all plays out. I thank you for the information. But I will continue keeping an eye on that, and I wanna see what,
No problem with that. I think
because
you guys will be happy when we're done.
with my experience in that business, what I see over there isn't gonna make it, so.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Next on our agenda, we'll move on to safety and transportation. Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn?
I have
Mr.
one quick
Mano?
question. I've gotten 4 phone calls in the last week from residents about people walking large dogs unleashed. I don't know if anybody else got any calls on that, but we do have an ordinance that says they have to be leashed. So maybe you can check at your next meeting and see if there's any, anybody else getting reports of that, or, what we're gonna do about that, because you can't have large dogs walking around without a leash on them.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Any other questions? Mr. Mano, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Board of Zoning. Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Board of Zoning and Appeals met June 12th at 7 p.m. There's one item on the agenda tonight, 2018-44. We can address when presented. The applicant is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we'll move on to Planning Commission. Mr. Balestria.
Thank you. The Planning Commission met on June the 18th. Council is copied on the minutes, and as a result, of that meeting. Resolution 2018-43 is on our agenda to be discussed tonight. I'll address any questions at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Are there any questions for Mr. Balestria? Seeing none, we will move on to our public portion. Pursuant to city code, each person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak, with a maximum of 30 minutes allowed for the entire public portion. Although it is not a time for public debate, this is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please know there will be no personal attacks or comments that will be allowed. Also, if you are here in connection with the agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized, then approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:46. I will open the public portion. Name and address, please.
My name is Nancy Lauren Mayatt. My address is 1277 Psalm Center Road. I am here because I would like to get microblading. I'm an esthetician. Sorry, this is the first time I've ever done this. I'm a little nervous. I'm an esthetician and a massage practitioner, and I have a business at Salon Lofts. I run a loft space there. My business is called Hollywood Dolls Beauty Boutique, and I offer many services. And I would like to offer microblading as well to my business, and that's why I'm here tonight to get your approval.
Okay, thank you. When we get to the agenda item, we'll call you up if we have any questions. Anybody else like to be heard? Sir?
My name's Joe Myers. I'm the architect for the Temple of Israel project that was at Planning Commission last week. Just here to tell you that they're adding a few classrooms to the building, not increasing their population, just better serving the functions that go on there now. They consolidated the lot with the lot next door so they could expand onto it, which was approved at the last meeting. And this is what the new addition will look like. I'll be here in the audience if you have any questions when you get to that portion of the meeting.
Thank you so much. We'll call you up if we have any questions. Anybody else like to be heard this evening? Seeing none, we will close the public portion at 7:48. We will move on to resolutions. We will begin tonight with Resolution 2018-42. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-42, a resolution adopting the alternative tax budget information format for the City of Mayfield Heights, State of Ohio, for the fiscal year 2019 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call on the motion to suspend, please.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Balestria. Discussion? Mr. DeJohn?
Mr. Tribby, have the allocations of the millage changed?
Yes, they have. We're providing for debt service for next year to pay off some of the road notes.
Okay, how are they changed?
In my
on-
memo, it
on your
explains that.
top one, that's the new ones, but do you have the old ones with you by any chance?
It's 10 mills. Last year, we had, everything went to the general fund.
Specific for each fund, you know, like 8.455 to the general fund?
Yeah, that's the general fund. And then we would put .945 to the bond retirement to pay off some of the notes next year. And by law, we have to allocate .30 to the police and fire pension funds. The total is 10 mills. It's been that way since 1951. There's no change.
Thank you. Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Tribby, I have one quick question on the Schedule 2 summer day camp, $447,300.
Correct.
It seems so much higher than everything else. for
Oh,
summer
that
day.
fund has had a substantial fund balance for years.
So it just keeps accumulating in that fund, is what you're saying?
Yes, all of the fees charged are put into that fund, and the expenses, of course, are charged to that fund.
So, I mean, when you look at road improvement, which we do a great deal of, it's $600,000, and then you look at summer day camp, it's $447,000.
That's you're talking about the beginning fund balance and the
Beginning
ending.
fund balance, yeah.
But that is correct.
Any other questions? Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes?
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes?
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-42 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-43. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-43, a resolution approving a lot consolidation of Cuyahoga County permanent parcel numbers 861-25-006 and 861-25-058, so as to create one parcel for the expansion of Temple Israel of Greater Cleveland near Tamid Heschel Israel, 1732 Lander Road. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Teresi. Roll call on the motion to suspend, please.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Discussion, Mr. Belstria, do you have anything to add to this?
In the Planning Commission, we just approved to go forward with this final site plan. There was one review we wanted to see from the city engineer, and Mr. Gerson did answer our question with regards to, I don't know if council was copied on Mr. Gerson's memo, just for making sure everything was platted correctly and for his review and legal description, and we received that. So it was approved by the city engineer, so we can go forward with the approval.
Thank you, Mr. Belstria. Anything further? Could we have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes?
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-43 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is 2018-44. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-44, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Nancy Lauren Maya on behalf of Hollywood Dolls Beauty Boutique, 1277 Som Center Road, permission to perform microblading as an accessory use at the beauty salon, Cuyahoga County permanent parcel number 862-26-002. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call on the motion to suspend, please.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes?
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Teresi, seconded by Mr. Balestria. We heard from the applicant. Mrs. Sabetta, you have anything you want to add to it?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, the applicant requests approval to perform microblading procedure. This is a semi-permanent enhancement technique of the eyebrows. Tattooing is not permitted use in a U4A. It's a development district. 115302C is exceptions to district regulations. The BZA felt that the use district regulations established in this zoning code to be in general keeping with the uses authorized. The said request was granted for the reason that microblading is an accessory use, and enforcement of the ordinance would impose on the owner a practical difficulty in the use of the property. As you heard the applicant state, She wants to expand her services already in use: facial beauty, hair removal, lash extensions, skincare, facials, and now making microblading an accessory use. This was an unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Mr. Mano?
Question. What is this gonna do as far as setting the pace for tattoo parlors to come into the city?
This is not tattooing.
It's not tattooing.
No, it's not permanent. It's a semi-permanent procedure. The applicant is here. She can explain it better. They don't even use the same tool.
But this won't enable somebody to circumvent our,
This is not a variance, it's a like use. That's what 115302C. And it's part of what she does. She's a licensed esthetician working on face and neck beauty.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes, Mr. Mano, in my legal opinion, I don't think this will have any precedential value in whether or not a tattoo parlor is permitted anywhere in the city.
thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Teresi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We also gave another applicant who went before, I believe, BZA for microblading on Som Center. We also approved that individual's ability to do microblading. And basically, it's for individuals who've lost their eyebrows due to radiation or chemo. And we did approve that. I believe it may have been a 7-0 vote at that time for that individual.
Thank you for reminding us. Anything further? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belastria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes, Resolution 2018-44 has been adopted. Moving to resolutions, we'll begin with Resolution 2018-45. Mr. Murphy. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, wrong resolution. I don't know why I said that. Getting tired already. 2018-45, please.
Thank you. Resolution 2018-45, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Valley Freightliner, Inc. for a 2.5-ton cab and chassis Freightliner Model 108 SD for the Service Department and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call on the motion to suspend, please.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belastria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Mr. Balestria, you have anything to add on this?
The purchase was approved at a previous meeting. We did receive a memo from Mr. Tribby. The cost actually came in lower than anticipated, $170,000. And these are state contract prices.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Anybody else? Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes.
Mr. Belastria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-45 has been adopted. Next, we will have Resolution 2018-46. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution 2018-46, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Concord Road Equipment Manufacturing, Inc. for a combination dump body spreader, central hydraulic system, snowplow hitch, and power angling plow. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Mano. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Belastria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mr. Mano. Anything to add, Mr. Balestria?
Nope.
Nope. Any, think we discussed it. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-46 has been adopted. Next on our agenda are ordinances. The first ordinance is 2018-19. And do we have to read it first before we move to table it? Okay, is there a motion to table?
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Teresi. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Ordinance 2018-19 will be tabled. Next is ordinance 2018-25. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 794 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Mayfield Heights titled Earned Income Tax Regulations, effective beginning January 1, 2016, by increasing the rate of municipal income tax set in Section 794.01 thereof from 1% per year to 1.5% per year, providing for submission of the amendment to the electors of the city. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Balestria. Anything anyone wants to add to this? Any questions? Mrs. Sabetta?
Thank you, Madam President. At the Finance and Audit meeting, Mr. Tribby was asked to explain Section 794 of the Codified Ordinances due to the January 2016 effective date. Beginning on page 2 of the legislation is the description of how the funds can be used. The Regional Income Tax Agency will be able to provide the amount the city receives monthly attributable to the increase. Council still retains the ultimate control. The certified copy of the ordinance must be in the Board of Elections of Cuyahoga County by August 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Anything further? Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. Mano?
No.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
No.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-26 has been adopted, or 25, I'm sorry, has been adopted. Next, we're going to deviate from the agenda, if everyone's okay with that, and ask for a motion to do that, and then we'll continue on, and then we'll go back to it after our executive session. So is there a motion to deviate from the agenda? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. We will now move on to ordinance number 2018-27. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-28, an ordinance determining the schedule of regular council, meeting of council.
Oh, what are we doing here?
Too fast. 2018-27, an ordinance providing for the organization of certain administrative departments and fixing the salaries and bonds of certain officers and employees therein and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Discussion? Any questions? Can we have a roll call, please, Lisa? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Mrs. Sabetta, I'm sorry, I didn't notice.
Okay, thank you. In the Finance and Audit meeting, the mayor's memo on the salary ordinance 2018 through 2020 was reviewed by section line item changes. The Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Day holiday overtime was added after the memo was drafted. See the bold print in the ordinance. Mr. Tribby referenced his memo on the rates in the salary ordinance reflecting the amounts negotiated with the unions. Lorna Zeller presented a chart of the department restructure of the mayor's office and the Office of Compliance Standards regarding a new position, Community Relations Manager, requiring PRSA certification within 1 year of employment, and describing the qualifications and duties of this position, deleting section 13 of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions? Mrs. Tracy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a question regarding the Director of Recreation and why he is paid so much less than all of the other directors. Mr. Ward seems to be at every event. He's there every night. He's there on Saturday. Seems to put in a great deal of time, and yet his pay scale is so much less. It doesn't seem fair. Mayor?
Mayor?
If you would like to amend and make it equivalent to the other department heads, I'm sure Sean will go running, screaming out of this room.
But my question is, why would he be so much one
That's
person be
that's
so
where
much less?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I didn't mean to
That's
interrupt.
where it started. Parks and Rec director was always, when he was hired, was less. He's been going up the same amount as everybody, but without a large increase somewhere along the line to make it comparable to all the other department heads. That's the reason. There just was never a large jump. I'll be happy to change it if you'd like me to.
I would move to amend that, yes. Yes.
Well, I think part of the original history is years ago, I think it was a part-time position, and
Was
when
he
it came,
part-time?
no, not Sean, but further back, way back, if I'm not mistaken.
Never caught
Mr.
up.
Tribby, do you remember? Isn't that why it started on a lower scale? Yeah.
It goes back a long time where it's part-time. I think it became full-time, oh, maybe 20 years ago.
Right. Okay. Okay, so we are asking to,
Can we send that to the finance committee to set the parameters and so on? Would that make it easier to do it that way? Okay.
okay, so
let's-
do we want to?
You just crushed Sean right there when you said that.
It'll be retroactive, don't worry about it.
So do we want to continue voting on this and then send that portion and we could come back, or should we table this? How do we want to do
No,
it?
no,
Vote on it? Okay. Okay, we'll
I'll
vote on
withdraw
that
my
and then we will
motion
send
to
this to
amend.
committee.
I'll withdraw the motion to amend, send it to committee.
Thank you. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Snyder?
Can Lorna explain what the changes for us?
Is that what you mean, the
Yeah.
restructure? Yeah.
I heard from her report, so I apologize.
Yeah. The restructure was done to support the mayor's office, to take the components that the mayor relies on for a lot of the things around here. The mayor's office really needs that kind of support. And whatever happens in the mayor's office going forward, who's ever sitting in that seat, I think will be very happy that they have that type of team around them and that type of support. I utilize them, I rely on them, and bringing them into my department also gives it more structure. They're not just kind of on their own all out there on their own. They're brought into a department with oversight, and I think it's a great support for the mayor's office.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Mrs. Teresi?
Mayor, two things. What happens now to, I knew that we needed a compliance officer, so now we don't have a compliance officer. And I thought that though not the title, I thought that Mrs. Zeller was doing economic development all this time. So did we just
Madam
change
Chairman?
the title?
Mayor? Yeah, her title change is more of a reflection on her duties. And compliance is still part of it, but it's more economic development and administration, so.
But she'll do both.
Oh, yes, she's still, well, that's why I wanted to put economic development in there specifically in the title. We feel that's very important, so.
And one more question. The, Mr. Finaro, part-time resident relations, it's on this
Oh.
department restructure, A. Finaro, PT.
Andy, he's been in that position.
He's been in that position part-time. Is he also our magistrate collecting the parking fines?
Yeah, he is our magistrate. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes,
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Ordinance 2018-27 has been adopted. Next is ordinance 2018-28. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-28, an ordinance determining the schedule of regular meeting of council on Monday, July 23, 2018 at 6 p.m. and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Belstria, seconded by Mr. Mano. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Snyder,
yes,
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Can I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Belstria. I just want to note the time is 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
yes,
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Ordinance 2018-28 has been approved. Next is motions, and we'll start with motion A. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Motion to confirm the decision of the Planning Commission approving a final site plan for a 4,655 square foot addition to Temple Israel Ner Tamid, 1732 Lander Road.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Mr. Balestri, anything to add?
No, there were no changes from the preliminary.
Okay, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion A stands. Next, we'll ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session. We'll have union contract negotiations and also the purchase or sale of real property. Is there a motion, please? Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes, we will reconvene after executive session. Thank you.